Welcome back to This Is Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, I still have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough. Chike Ogea, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State, and Managing Director of Mark Foley Limited. And Professor David Awurawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Well, Prof, we've had two guests, Mr. Marco Mumirobo, challenging the Supreme Court in some regards, commenting on legal issues in the last week in the other regard. And then, of course, we had Paul Ejimi, International Affairs specialist, commenting on the just concluded Chogom, Commonwealth Head of Government's meeting in Kigali, Rwanda. I'd like to start with you to take on some of the issues that our two guests addressed.
Yeah, thank you. Many issues have been raised, but let's look at two most critical ones there, one on each side. The issue of certificate, for instance, as raised by the first speaker. He did argue that with a good school cert, that should be enough. I do not agree with his thinking there. The issue is that you can hold a school certificate. What's the purpose for the law to require possession of a school certificate? The issue is the belief that possession of a school certificate will be a quantification of exposure, certain quantum of knowledge required for purposes of leadership, political governance, etc. But by the time this qualification, this constitutional provision was put in place, the complexity of global governance has not been there. Now, if, for instance, anyone is raising the issue of Bola Tinubu's certificates, I ask myself, is it that problem? You see, what is at stake that we are not addressing is dishonesty in political governance. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari, when his own certificate issue was raised, please tell me today, I don't know whether he actually has a school certificate or he doesn't have it. What we were told, based on media reports by that time, was that, look, we discovered that the school he purportedly attended now came up. They were now trying now to find and arrange the certificates that he had this, he had that. The issue is not that you have more experience or you have higher certificate. Since this is the minimum requirement being asked, now the president did not show us, the current president has not shown us that he's in possession of a school certificate or is equivalent. We were told he attended many conferences, etc. all along. Now, on the issue of Tinubu, there is a colleague of mine, Dr. Femi Aribisala. He is not used to all these frivolous statements. He said he did an article in 2014, according to which he said, look, he, Femi Aribisala, attended government college in Ibadan, and that he was there from 1962 to 68. Now, Bola Tinubu also claimed to have attended the same college from 1965 to 1968. And Aribisala is saying that he was not there. So the issue now regardless of whatever might be reported. Please, if Bola Tinubu does not have a certificate, we can address that one. My concern is that any leader, whether he has PhD or he does not have PhD, not to talk of school cert, if you are telling lies, then you are not eligible to provide leadership in Nigeria. It's as simple as that. But we have politicians, people, they want PhD, they want to answer doctor, they want to ask professor without asking. We like titles. It doesn't work. And when you take Paul Egime in a nutshell, what he's trying to say, you can say that Paul Kagame has done well. He has provided, added values to leadership. That may be correct. But the issue is that within this Commonwealth organization, there is a group also called Commonwealth Realms, like the fourth essence of the realm. These are the members who still believe that Queen Elizabeth II is still their official monarch. So there is an intra-Commonwealth politics within we are not talking about. And the issue is this, please, all these asylees being exported, deported to Rwanda is most unfortunate. This is the beginning of recolonization of Africa par excellence in different ways. The issue is this: you are giving £120 million to accommodate refugees coming from Afghanistan, Syria, you know, all these Arab people. Now, if you look at the debate at the level of the United Kingdom, for instance, if you look at the decision of the European Union Council, there are protests against that one there. The rule in international law, the classical rule there is that, look, if any refugee succeeds in entering, putting his shoes, legs on your territory, you cannot return, you cannot send him packing. It's a basic rule. But the United Kingdom had aroused that. And now, what they don't want, the non-grata in Europe, now they are finding an accommodation for them in Rwanda. Most unfortunate. We need to think as black people.
Thank you, Prof. But Professor Awurawo, are you there? I would like to have your take on the two major conversations with which we started the program. Yes, I can see you on the screen. Please go ahead.
Thanks so very much. I will begin with the submissions of Malcolm Omirogbo. He talked about the Supreme Court ruling on hijab. He also talked about certificates and then political governance in Nigeria and the Supreme Court judgment also in the United States. I would like to begin with the Supreme Court judgment in Nigeria. Well, I think Mr. Malcolm has made his point by wearing that regalia to the Supreme Court a few days ago. And, you know, he didn't say he was protesting against the Supreme Court decision. He was only saying that the Supreme Court judgment has, you know, expanded freedoms and liberty, freedom of worship, freedom of conscience, and that he was taking advantage of that, you know, to also wear in Zolokun regalia. But the comments he made today seem to indicate that it was not just to affirm his rights and freedom, it is also to protest in some way against the judgment of the Supreme Court. My take on that is that the Supreme Court has made many fantastic you know, judgments, you know, over the years. Most recently, the striking down of Section 84, Section 12 of the 2022 Electoral Act. It shows that the Supreme Court has been courageous and has been well thoughtful in most of the decisions. But there are some of them that have been difficult to, you know, rationalize and make sense of. The Imo State, you know, ruling on the governorship, which brought the current governor in, and then this hijab thing too. I think these are some judgments that people have difficulty rationalizing. He also, Mr. Murubu also provided a leeway that Supreme Court can walk back this decision, even though it's final, can walk it back, the way they have done the Amechi, case, where they ruled that the candidate of the party, and then whether you attempt election or not, you can become a governor and all that. They can walk it back such that, a balance is found. Because, if people begin to dress in all sorts of religious clothes to public places and official functions, everything becomes unwieldy. The Suleiman wears his sultana, the Cherubim and Seraphim wear his own as well, the local man wears his own, the hijab, the whole thing becomes, and of course, Nigeria is supposed to be a country, a secular state where religion is not supposed to feature that prominently. So my take is that the Supreme Court needs to be very thoughtful about these decisions, because that's the final, the last court, the highest, the apex court. And also, when mistakes are, perceived to have been made, they can also walk that back. But my advice is that Mr. Murubu does not need to keep wearing that this thing to courts. He has made his point, and I'm sure the Supreme Court, the members are, sensible enough to walk that back. Regarding certificates, I agree entirely with Professor Akinteriwa. It's a matter of, being honest, being transparent, being, forthright. Senator Bola Tinubu, the Jagaban, certainly, has a degree from Chicago State University. But it seems that so much has been modeled up. University of Chicago is also added, which is not so clear. And now the primary and secondary schools, which are also problematic. So it's not a matter of whether Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu is educated or not, experienced or not, and all that. It's a matter of, transparency and honesty. And let's see how things work out moving forward. He's going to be embarrassed, It's going to be embarrassed. There are people who have been writing on social media, CSOs who are, making so much of it. And, that is just how it is. Let us see how the whole thing plays out. But the lesson to learn from that is that whatever we are doing, we should be sure that everything is correct, accurate, transparent, so that we don't run into this kind of, complications moving forward. For Mr. Paul Ejime, he spoke so well of Kagame. In fact, one is tempted to call him the Kagamites, saying that everything he has done is so well and all that. It's true. Kagame has done well. Women empowerment, effective governance and all that. But the human rights record cannot be wished away. We cannot say, sometimes you need to be high-handed to be successful or to achieve your objectives. No, you can be effective and successful and still respect human rights. We have spoken against this whole thing throughout the week, that considering the human rights record of Rwanda under Kagame, and considering what the Commonwealth stands for, it was inappropriate to allow Rwanda to host this the Shogun that just ended. So whereas we can commend Kagame for what he has done, there is no way we can justify his human rights records. And of course, that is again has been reflected in the asylum thing. I mean, how can African agree to this kind of thing in 2022? What he agreed to, people in the UK are even criticizing, the Prince of Wales, saying no, that this is not right. The EU saying no, this is not right. So that speaks to the low level of, acknowledgement of human rights by Kagame. But we are happy that people are waiting in here and there, and hopefully that asylum arrangement will not see light of day moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Chike Ogea joining us from our Abuja studio. Chike, good to have you. I hope you like that studio in Abuja. Yeah,
Yes.
it's good experience, right? Okay. Yeah, your take on the two major conversations.
I've been here a couple of times. You know, let's start with the case of the Supreme Court, the Section 84 situation. If you ask me, I would say that that has been one of the bane of, you know, this our present democracy. We have a situation where leadership never really thinks through. And that always gets us into this kind of cul-de-sac and this kind of arrangements where we don't know what, you know, we have actually done. Okay, we've had this situation now where the president has been advised, don't forget the president has a chief legal officer and all of that, to sign a law, which, you know, to all intents and purposes had not been completed. Now the president signs the law and finds out that they have more or less shortchanged themselves about the statutory delegates and all of that. And he now runs to the Supreme Court saying, you know, he wants this thing amended. Obviously, the situation with the Supreme Court is even saying to him, you don't even have the right to do what you are doing. They don't even bother going into the merit of the case of whether there should be those delegates or not and all of that. They're just talking about process. And this really is not something that the president should be, due to the kind of legal advice he gets, that he should be getting into trouble with. And I think that is why it's important that we think through this kind of processes, you know, when we want to do them. And of course, the matter was struck out. And if the president has to go and put his house in order, then obviously he will get good legal advice of how he can proceed with this. Most likely maybe from the High Court again or whatever, you know. So that is on that one. On the case of the letter of complaint, in the same problem again with the judiciary. If you ask me, I think my noble profession, you know, the law profession is really at an all-time low. Yes, we understand that funding is a problem with everything in the country now. But when it gets to a stage where, you know, judicial officers of the highest caliber in the land, the Lord Chief Justices in the Supreme Court are writing letters to the Chief Justice of the Federation and saying to them, look, we don't have money to function, we can't even get basic stationery and that kind of thing. And the Chief Justice is responding the like and saying you are driving SUVs, you should not be talking. I mean, how low do we want to go with that? These are the things, you know, I think we should not subject our judiciary, which is the bastion of democracy, because that is what holds both the legislature and the executive accountable. We should not bring it to such a low level. And I think going forward, everybody concerned should put their heads together and sort this mess out. Again, when we come to the situation of the Ekweremadu's case, thankfully, this is going on in another jurisdiction. Well, there's been so much coming out of the social media that you don't even know what to believe. Some people are saying that that child, that he was 15 years old and of course unable to give consent to that kind of thing. That basically the Ekweremadus just procured a young child from somewhere with the intention to save their child's life. Of course, there's the ones that are looking at it purely from the little girl that is ill, who I think if his parents have done more due diligence for her, they will have found that there's a place where you can go to really get willing donors, and all the checks will have been done. So that of taking a young boy from Nigeria, of course, those facts are not clear now. Whether some people say it was some young boy from under the street, some people say it was a young man that they knew, but obviously was financially challenged and, you know, a situation of having an opportunity of going to London and donating one of his kidneys and getting some monetary benefit will be something that will be appealing to him. Whatever the case is, the good thing is that this matter is in London, where I know that the rule of law is, you know, 100% at work. And let's just be a little bit patient. The whole facts will come out before we can start passing judgment and saying this or saying that. But in all of this, I know we have to think about the little girl. I mean, look at the situation where her parents are now going to be remanded in prison. Maybe her situation will be getting worse. I don't know. You know, we have to think and pray for her. And then if this other child is also a minor, we also have to think for him and, you know, be prayerful about him as well. That was he doing this against his will? And if he was a minor, obviously he had no capacity to even make a consent. Then that obviously brings us to the Tinubu situation. Again, if you know, I've heard what the two professors have said on this, which is very good, that when people lie, even about basic things that don't really matter, how then can they be accountable as as leaders? How can you even choose such people as leaders? But I'm looking at it from the point of view of the law. And I think what is important here is that we in Nigeria have to go back to the drawing board and rework a lot of these laws. We have to be careful what we are doing. How can a nation like Nigeria of over 200 million people be talking about electing a president that has attempted school start and all of that? All that can't hold water anymore. Our whole, you know, laws have to go and be reworked. We have to have clear-cut cases of what, you know, a leader should have, whether as a governor, as a House of Rep member, as a senator, or as a president. And I think we should lift the bar slightly more because they will tell you even in America, in the diaspora, everywhere, Nigerians are maybe some of the most educated people you can find. So why are we still struggling with this kind of thing? I think NAS and all the states of the assembly, if it has to be a constitutional amendment or whatever, we have to move away clearly and set new parameters for leadership for ourselves so that we can stop getting to all these kind of very embarrassing situations we get into. Finally, in the case of Chogom, yeah, like Professor Awurawo, I think they called him a Kagamite. Yes, Kagame has done some great things for his country. Kigali, I can assure you, it's an unbelievable city to see. You don't even know you're in Africa. What they've done with power generation, then they've added new issues of gender mainstreaming and all of that. I hear over 50% of their parliament are women. And he's done all of that and brought development to his people, which basically is what Africa needs. But in all of that, and with the kind of politics and the bit of a strongman situation going on there, is that the kind of, you know, showpiece you want in Africa? To say that because of that he should host Chogom, just like both professors have said. I mean, especially Professor Akinteriwa, who is a professor of international law. And, you know, I like to listen to him because he's very knowledgeable about that. So I think that needn't have been done. Yes, we could get Rwanda to come into Chogom because, you know, the Commonwealth, it's good for it to increase. And then with time, you know, with all these other good things he's doing, then we start seeing less of the violation of rights and all of that. Then in a couple of years, they can talk about hosting it, you know, but maybe hosting it right now, I don't, you know, as with them, I don't think that was very good. And finally, the situation about the refugees. I think that is so repugnant to modern day whatever, because is this reverse slavery or what is it they are trying to achieve there? Europe should be able to deal with its refugees problems and not carry over to Africa. I mean, Kagame has done so much in Rwanda that the 120 million they are offering him, what difference is that going to make? I really wonder. Yes, he might have a lot of land, but let that land be populated by Africans. It is better. Because tomorrow there becomes confusion. By the time you mix all these races, in many years to come, everybody will start arguing who owns the land, who doesn't own the land, and all of that. All these indigenship and settler problems will arise. So I think that whole idea should just be jettisoned, just like the professor said.
Let's take another subject. Let's go to the United States, where there is big controversy over the decision of the Supreme Court by a majority of 7-2 to overturn Roe versus Wade, 1973. Well, there have been controversy over this particular ruling of the Supreme Court. You recall the Casey case of 1992, Anna Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the Supreme Court in a lead judgment by Justice Samuel Alito, says that Roe versus Wade was egregiously wrong, was damaging, and that it should be set aside with great implications. And it's as follows. Protesters are now pouring onto the streets in cities across the United States after a Supreme Court ruling which overturned Roe versus Wade. It means millions of American women no longer have the legal right to an abortion in their home state. Women political leaders are urging the president to declare a public health emergency. From New York, Faith Orr reports for Arise News.
My body, my choice! My body, my choice!
Thousands of people are marching against the loss of abortion rights for American women. Protests are largely peaceful. This is the scene on Saturday in St. Louis, Missouri, one of the first states to ban abortions.
My choice! My
Demonstrators stopped traffic on freeways in Los Angeles.
decision! Illegitimate!
While in DC, hundreds of people on both sides of the issue gathered outside the Supreme Court. There was unrest in some places. Around 20 people were arrested in New York. In Arizona, police fired tear gas to disperse protesters outside the Capitol building. And at a pro-choice rally in Iowa, one woman had to be taken to hospital after a truck ploughed into protesters. Activists are warning the consequences of the ruling will be severe for some women.
Justices on the Supreme Court have manufactured a crisis for half of the country. Those people with means and resources, financial and family support and community support, they may be able to find the procedures. And right now, 1 in 5 women, 1 in 5 people who can have a child will have an abortion. 1 in 5, so it means it could be your sister, your cousin, it could be you. And for many, without those resources, without financial or community support, either will find ways to injure themselves, go underground and find illegal providers, or will have forced and unwanted pregnancies.
Because of this threat, women politicians are urging the president to declare a public health emergency.
This is part of the Republican Party's dark vision for America. They want to roll back every possible right that has been earned over the decades.
We're not going back. We're not going to be treated as second-class citizens, and we're dang on sure not going to be treated as property.
But not everyone is upset by the decision. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Republican representative for Georgia, where a new law is set to be put in place that will ban abortions around the 6-week mark. That's when many women discover they're pregnant, so it effectively outlaws the procedure altogether.
I am overjoyed. My heart is really full and just absolutely thrilled that the Supreme Court justices overturned Roe versus Wade with their Dobbs ruling, and I think this is a real answer to prayer and the beginning of the real work for the life movement in America.
For some activists, this ruling doesn't go far enough.
Well, in Florida, we have the abortion is now going to be limited up to 15 weeks. But I want to see it to 0 at all, no abortion at all. That all the abortion mills here in Florida be completely closed.
Some clinics had to close down on the spot, leaving women stranded. Even in those that can remain open, emotions are running high. This clinic in Kansas is worried about the future. Their Democratic governor is up for re-election this year.
We are fortunate enough that access is currently protected here in the state of Kansas, but we know that we are going to see even more out-of-state patients than we have been, and that access for people in our surrounding states and for people here in the state of Kansas who can no longer get appointments is going to be very severely impacted. Performing abortions today of all days definitely carries more meaning with it, and you feel the importance of this work.
Pro-choice activists are vowing to press on in the fight for abortion rights. But with around half of the states expected to apply some ban on the procedure, they have a tough battle on their hands. Faith Orr, Arise News, New York.
Well, clearly, the United States is divided right down the middle between Democrats and Republicans on the issues of women's reproductive rights, the right to choose, and on the sensitive issue of abortion, which has been a major, controversial matter in the United States. Well, some analysts have said this will be a major issue in the midterm elections as the Democrats and the Republicans do battle over this particular issue. But what does it really mean in real terms? Let me start with you, Professor Awurawo. Professor Awurawo, if you are there.
Yes, I'm here.
Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, overturning Roe versus Wade.
Yes, the Supreme Court decision a few days ago now means that the women abortion rights is now trampled upon, and it means that the position of the Republicans now becomes what the Americans will have to, live by. Don't forget, different states have had different legislations on this, up till now. Why some abortion remains restricted, in some others it is not quite so. The Supreme Court judgment has now brought everybody on the same pedestal and restricted abortion rights. I agree with one of the women who spoke, who commented, and said the Supreme Court, by its decision, has managed to manufacture a crisis. I agree entirely with her. These protests will not go away for a long, long time because there are women and even others in the United States and beyond who are very passionate about abortion rights. And the way it was before now, where different states had different legislations and, in some states, the atmosphere was more lax than in others, and people could take their decisions on the basis of their personal circumstances was a lot better. So putting everybody on the same pedestal and restricting the abortion rights of women, I think, is a recipe for crisis in the United States. And the next couple of weeks and months, we are going to see how that plays out. But more fundamentally, it raises a whole lot of issues about the things that Americans will need to work on. The Americans pride themselves and talk about American exceptionalism. But events of the past couple of months have revealed that there's a whole lot the Americans need to re-examine themselves and work on instead of just talking about exceptionalism. One of them is gun rights. With all the killings, Americans are still holding on Second Amendment and thinking nothing should be done. Fortunately, reason is prevailing on that now that some measures have been taken in Congress. This one too is the same thing. It has to do with the Supreme Court. And what we have seen with the United States Supreme Court is that decisions reached is always influenced by the political leaning of the members, not so much looking at the substance of the law, which is very concerning. When you have the majority of Republicans, the Republican-nominated members of Supreme Court, decisions seem to go the way of go conservative, pro-life and the rest of them. When you have majority of Democrats, you have the opposite happening. I mean, Supreme Court should be interpreting the law as it is, and not whether you lean Republican or lean Democrat. I think beyond the abortion rights and the decision, that is one thing the Americans will need to look at, and not this situation whereby the presidents struggle to nominate members into the Supreme Court because it will favor the Democrats when it's a Democratic president and favor Republican when the president is Republican. But I think it's something that they will have to look at moving forward because the women, I'm sure, will not accept, and they have just gone to stir the hornet's nest.
Well, the key point is that the Supreme Court of the United States is ideologically divided. And that's why Senator Susan Collins has also been protesting that despite the fact that she supported Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who promised that he was not going to support the overturning, the rolling back of Roe versus Wade. He did precisely that. And I guess President Trump, whose 3 justices are part of this assault on women's rights in the United States, must be very happy where he is. But anyway, it will be an election issue. Chike Ogia, let me come to you quickly. I see you on the screen.
Yeah, yes. The situation of the law in America, it goes back even to the legal situation where you start asking the question. I remember we did this in school. Where does life really begin? Is it at conception or is it at delivery? And who has that right, to decide whether a life should indeed come into the world or not? A lot of controversy has been stirred up by this judgment. And just like you rightfully said, that is the nature of American politics. It is, you are looking at a situation of the mixture of politics and law, which is the scenario in America. If you recall, when this Supreme Court was being put together by the Republicans, Donald Trump went out of his way to find judges that believe in the typical Republican ways of doing things. And one of the basic beliefs of the Republicans is that abortion should be outlawed. So this should not come as a surprise, and this has been done. Although, just like Professor Awurawo was trying to say, don't discount the strength of the American Federation. So whether you like it or not, I can assure you a situation will still occur where different states will still handle this thing despite this ruling and get them, and go at their own pace. Yes, there's been this overall ruling by the Supreme Court, which should be adhered to by everyone. But, a lot will happen, I can assure you. We've not had the final, we've not seen because the finality of this cannot be said to have happened now, because on both sides of the argument, whether we like it or not, there are merits. If someone was raped, for instance, or you had this unwanted pregnancy, why do somebody would want to keep that kind of child? At the same time, as a human being, I don't think anybody has a right to take the life of another human being, even though unborn. So that is why I think this thing is a very personal thing and should be handled as such, based on the circumstances the individual finds themselves. And knowing the way the American system works, both the legal system and the politics, it's all about what works for America. So at the end of the day, I see a situation where each state will still continue to fashion a way of which its people, which is preferred by its people, though there will be a general direction of the way it should go. That's my take on this.
Okay, thank you. Well, very quickly, Professor Akintenewa, we still have one more topic of interest to take.
When I looked at the protesters and their cards, there was one attraction with an inscription that human rights begin from the womb. And that quickly linked me up to the submission of Professor Awurawo and the former Commissioner Ogia. Professor Awurawo rightly pointed, and you agree with him, that there is an ideological divide at the level of the Supreme Court, which normally, drives the attitudinal disposition of the justices. And Chike Ogia looked at it, asking the question, is it when we have the conception of time of delivery that we should be talking about this issue? Now, I look at the two positions differently. That look, you see, if the American people will want to look at it, If you want to have pregnancy, what prevents you from determining whether that pregnancy will be sustained for a longer time? If you want to have a relationship, because for me, this issue of abortion, for anybody to come out into the open and be saying, look, you should allow for abortion, that is very ungodly. That is killing. Whether the baby is born or unborn, according to Shike, why do you have the right to kill? So we are in a situation whereby you have conflicting rights. You are now saying, yes, it's your right to determine whether you want to abort or you do not want to abort. If you have the right to abort, do you have the right to kill? Even if you are killing a human being in your system. For me, I think that whoever is arguing in favor of abortion either must be promiscuous, they are prostitutes, they are unnecessarily promoting uncivilized culture. If you want to have a relationship, you want to have sexual relationship, for instance, then get condom, get all those things. You can prevent it. But you do not go into a relationship later on to now decide to want to kill. And Americans are providing leadership in the world. Why are they providing leadership in this type of things? The issue of a gun was raised either by Professor Awura or by Shike. Why is it that all these examples that are bad, these are what the United States now want to be exporting or telling us? You want to be the leader in democracy and etc. all along. Please, all along, all these things, it's not good to encourage abortion. Decide before you engage in it, rather than say you want to have freedom. We want freedom in other things.
Okay, we take our final topic of the day, and that's fuel scarcity in Nigeria. Nigeria was earlier this week hit by severe petrol crisis, as long queues resurfaced at petrol stations across the major cities of the country, especially in Lagos and Abuja. But in the past few days, the situation has considerably subsided. In the heat of the crisis, the Independent Marketers Association of Nigeria and the Association of Distributors and Transporters of Petroleum Products renewed their appeal for the Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Regulatory Authority to pay the 500 billion naira bridging claim it owes. Correspondent Onyin Sunday filed the following report.
The incessant fuel queues are no longer news. The why is the crux of the matter.
The NNPC has done very well to import these petroleum products. The main problem is to transport that petrol down to the filling stations. And we are having some challenges, especially when getting our money back for the transportation.
The continuous increase in the price of diesel to transport petrol has frustrated petroleum marketers and transporters. The 500 billion naira bridging claim is their demand.
It is very critical that these bridging claims and product differentials owed to the members of the Independent Petroleum Marketers and the Association of Distributors and Transporters be paid and paid immediately and urgently. Many of them have gone under because of the inability to access their funds that have been trapped since the defunct Petroleum Equalization Fund has gone out. Now the onus and responsibility falls upon the Midstream Downstream Regulatory Agency, and we're calling upon them to step up to their responsibilities.
Until this is sorted, every action taken to clear the queues is temporary. Accumulated before the passing of the Petroleum Industry Act, one wonders how long it will take to reconcile the books.
It doesn't take rocket science for you to print your records and bring it to the table. We sit down with you, go over it, agree on what is owed, so that these gentlemen can run their businesses and also help the totality of the country.
What I want Nigerians to understand is that this money that's paid to transporters, it doesn't come from government. It is the Nigerian masses that are contributing this money. The marketers, you buy petrol at filling station. Out of that 135 naira, 165 naira, in price template, there are certain amounts that is earmarked to take care of this petroleum transportation. But unfortunately, we independent marketers and the transporters, we are cash and carry marketers. We pay before we even took the product. But it takes us a long time before we get that money.
To keep business afloat, the Lagos chapter of the Independent Marketers Association of Nigeria announced that its members will begin to sell fuel at 180 naira per litre from Monday. With the intervention of the NNPC, this has been put on hold.
Some of these tank farm owners who have gone to collect this product, I don't blame them because costs of doing business have also changed. It became so difficult for them to sell at 148 naira, 17 kobo. But yesterday, I want to tell you that the PPMC and NPC went to their tank farm and released product. You are aware? That is why we are thanking them. That with this product, we are now assessing at this 148.17 kobo. Status quo ante must be maintained.
Exactly.
The fuel queues are expected to disappear in a few days, with NNPC announcing a 30-day supply in store. With this reprieve, the worst has only been postponed as the cost of business increases for depot owners. 500 billion naira debt still hanging for transporters, and refineries still asleep.
Okay, the petrol bomb price crisis in Nigeria. But unfortunately, we have just about 3 minutes to go. If you are there, Chike Ogia, you have 1 minute. We just share the 3 minutes quickly. Let me start with
Yes. Okay. Quickly, the situation of this pump price of PMS, I think the APC government, is in a quandary over it because basically it's all about politics. Elections around the corner and they cannot take the hard decisions. How long we can keep postponing the evil day is what I don't know. They say NNPC has brought in some more products because obviously you don't expect people that have to pay all this bridging cost to start selling much below their cost price. So there has to be appropriate pricing, and that has to be done basically by, doing the right thing. Look at the situation of diesel that is deregulated. That is where businesses are really being hurt. Because the kind of astronomical cost, like in my own organization, the kind of monies we're paying for diesel, I wonder whether we'll be able to operate, at the same kind of cost we are giving out to our guests. So those are the kind of issues we're looking at now. I think we really have to look at these things holistically and determine whether we are going to totally deregulate these sectors so that maybe the cost of some of these other derivatives will come down while they can meet each other somewhere in between. Or, we just have to do something. We can't go on like this, definitely. Because in another 2 weeks, when this supply runs out, we'll go back to status quo ante. Yeah.
You've almost taken all the 3 minutes. Professor Awurawo, you have half a minute left for you by Chike Ogia.
Okay. What has happened is that the government has simply kicked the can forward, postponing the evil day. The basic thing is that the refineries just have to work. The refineries work, the prices will go down, and the waste, on subsidy going to trillions of naira, will be removed. We just can't continue like this. I've been talking about inaction on the part of government. There has to be action to ensure that the refineries work so that life can go on for Nigerians and businesses.
Thank you, Professor Awurawo. Professor Akinterewa, you have a chance to just put in a word.
For as long as political governance in Nigeria continues largely to be predicated on dishonesty, whether you deregulate or you put on new refineries, there will not be any leeway.
Okay.
Honesty.
Thank you very much, Professor Akinterewa, Professor David Awurawo, and also Chike Ogea. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.